Hello, listener. Mike here. Hope you're well and good. Before we jump into the episode, I just wanted to make you aware that this episode features themes of graphic depictions of violence and traumatic events, descriptions of non-consensual sexual acts and desires, some downright filthy language, and is not suitable for listeners under the age of 18. Some of these themes may be triggering. Please take care of yourself and don't hesitate to ask for help if you need it. With that said, we hope you enjoy this episode.
The following episode may contain explicit language and spoilers. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to What's Your Fandom, the podcast with myself and my good friend Stuart journey through the fandoms of film, TV, games, books, comics and dystopian futures, flying our geek flags and talking our way through the multiverse, all of them. My name is Mike and hello Stu, how are you?
Yes, I'm great, thanks, yeah.
Not bad, thank you. How has your week been?
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, just been enjoying watching some good TV.
I tell you what, I completely agree with you. So we're here today to talk about the last 3 episodes of The Last of Us Season 1, because that's where our last episode ended. Full of speculation, and I was properly genuinely worried about whether Joel was going to survive or not. And I actually thought more so that he had died than he hadn't. I think I'd convinced myself that was it. And then I started seeing trailers for the episode Left Behind, and he wasn't in it. And I was just like, great. They're going to make us wait like 2 weeks to find out whether he's alive or not. And I got myself all spun out. But yes, anyway, we're here to watch the last 3 episodes. So before we actually kind of take a deep dive and we kind of talk about each episode individually, I just thought I wanted to ask you, how do you feel the season ended for you as a fan of the game?
Wow, man. Yeah, again, they very close to the game's conclusion. So I was very happy with how it went. It wasn't the most action-packed finale I've ever seen.
I was going to say to you, because you are a fan of the action-packed.
I am. Yeah, but I think having played the game, I know how it's going to go, so I sort of expected it to go the way it did, and I was still very happy with it.
Oh, okay, that's cool. Any sort of standout moments or perhaps differences between the game and the show that took you by surprise or something?
I mean, again, what they've got to do with the shows now is sometimes they do have to sort of trim the fat a little bit. So there are things that happen in the game that don't happen in the show for obvious reasons. Like in the game, there's a whole sequence where they basically, I'm trying to think like exactly what happens. Basically, there's this flood, and they're trying to sort of climb on top of toppled cars and buses to get across.
Oh Christ! Okay.
And they get like swept away by the water, and Joel like loses Ellie in the water, and then when he retrieves her, they sort of make it out the water, and it's from that moment then that the fireflies emerge and sort of capture them.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But in the show, obviously it's done very differently. Made more sense in the show why they did it. So they're just sort of walking, telling those jokes to each other. And yeah, they, from the fireflies' perspective, they're on patrol, they see these 2 people, they don't know who they are, and they take them out or wherever and knock them out.
Yeah.
So that does make a lot more sense.
Okay.
But I'm very happy with the giraffe sequence.
Okay. Tell me why.
No,
is that in the game, is it?
It's in the game,
right?
It's such an important moment in the game, because the game itself it's a gritty, violent game and stuff, but it's full of like these really human moments.
Yeah, quite sweet.
And the thing of her, when she goes to lower the ladder down and then she just drops it and runs.
Yeah.
Again, that's like in the game. So when you're playing it, you're like, oh shit, like more infected or whatever.
Yeah.
Then you see like the giraffes and stuff, and it's like, wow. And Ellie's sort of response to that is, it's great in the game, but obviously Bella Ramsey is equally brilliant in the show and stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's just such a powerful moment, and it's a moment where like they both, you know, where they both sort of come together again, like, and they share this experience together, and it's really nice.
It
Like,
was really lovely. I thought it was really lovely, and I don't know whether was it a real giraffe? Was it a CGI giraffe?
I was CGI.
It was CGI. Okay, okay, because it was very, very good then.
Oh yeah.
Because it did look very realistic to me.
Mm.
Okay, and I was going to ask you as well because I have to kind of take a step back here a second because obviously having not played the game, this might sound like the most obvious question, but I don't even know whether we actually covered it in the last episode. But in the game, who are you playing as?
Well, for the most part, you're playing as Joel.
Right. Okay. So you're playing as Joel. So you don't really see Joel until you see like those kind of scenes that are where like the scene takes over,
Oh, a cutscene.
like a cut scene. That's what they call it. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So you are Joel, and there are cut scenes of the story at certain key points for you to understand how Joel is feeling, I guess.
Yes.
Because this idea of like a story in a game, I have to try and remember that you're actually playing a game. So you're Joel and you're going around and I'm imagining you're trying to kill infected.
Mm.
And is Ellie just like next to you, kind of like follows you as you go?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Ellie's pretty much with you. I say the first character you play as in the game, you actually play as Sarah at the start of the game, but
Oh,
you're just like walking around at that point, and that's at the very, like when it kicks off at the start,
yeah.
and she doesn't quite know what's going on.
Yeah.
But I think they did that to make you feel like what the hell is going on.
That's so interesting. So you're playing as Sarah up until she dies.
No, up until it's just before she does. You play. So in the video game, she injures her leg in the show, doesn't she?
Yes.
Right, now that's because somebody throws something in the car, is it?
Yes. Well, there's the whole it's a car thing. Yes. Yeah.
Right, right. Within the game, it's a collision that happens.
Right.
So whilst you're in the car, I think I said before we talked about this about how the way it's like the camera like shoots it and stuff, the angle where it shows her in the car looking around, looking out the
Yes.
windows,
Yes.
all the same. So you're doing that in the game, but in the game, what happens then is a car plows into the side of you,
Right.
and when it does that, it cuts to this cinematic of like they're all trying to get out the car, and then it's from Joel's perspective then, and then he sees Sarah and she says how like she can't walk because her ankle hurts. So then he picks her up, and then after he picks her up, it cuts back into the game, and then you're playing as Joel carrying Sarah.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm with
Yeah.
you. Jeez. Okay. Yeah. So I kind of wanted to just get my head around that because I really don't have a frame of reference as an adaptation from gameplay to story because obviously the story is obviously incredibly important in the game. It's probably as important as the playing is,
Yeah.
I guess. So it's hard for me having I don't all I've seen is like the clips on sort of TikTok where you see the scenes side by side,
Right.
the cut scenes. So I've not actually seen any videos of gameplay. So
Okay.
I might have to have a little look and see what that actually looks like to kind of get a feel for what that is. But yeah, okay, so cool. Let's then dive into the last three episodes because there's a lot to talk about here. The first one, which you teased me about last time, was just called Left Behind, which is a sort of flashback episode where Ellie is with her best friend, whose name I can't remember, Riley, and you see essentially how she gets bitten.
Yes.
That's what the episode's about. So talk me through like how is that part of the gameplay? How does that work? And how has it been adapted from the game?
Okay, so in the actual game itself, that's like downloadable content. So it's not part of the main story of the game. It's an add-on to the game which you download it separately, and then you sort of play that on like a separate sort of mission.
Oh, right.
But it still takes place where, in the modern day, Joel is obviously like he's out for the count.
Right.
So you do play it in that part of the story. So yeah, in the game version, it's very identical. The only thing that they didn't put in the game is the TV show did a great job of um, showing Ellie like training with Fedra, and do you know when she's like actively she's trying to train with these people in this sort of like what is it, like a school slash
Yes.
right? That's not in the game. Um, you are in some sort of it looks like some sort of hostel or some kind of accommodation, if you like.
Yeah.
Riley, again, I don't think it says in the game about her being a firefly or trying to become a firefly. She's just there, kind of thing.
Oh.
But the rest of the sequence where they go to like the mall and they go to the arcades and stuff like that, that's all the same. That's pretty much the same.
It was so cool seeing them being in the mall and having that sort of that exhale, that kind of deep breath where they could just be sort of teenagers again, and or how we see teenagers to be going around the carousel and the all the games they were playing, and they were playing Mortal Kombat. That was just so like refreshing. It was really nice actually. It was a nice pause in the narrative to have that moment and actually kind of want to talk about Ellie's. I mean, Bella Ramsey like acted her ass off in that episode. I thought the real subtle moments and looks, and you totally understood what she was feeling and what she was thinking, and how she didn't know whether to act on what she was feeling because obviously she's, I think, basically in love with Riley.
Yes.
And that was beautifully performed.
Yeah. No, I did. And yeah, there were moments in that, as you said, where like I think it's when they were on the carousel. I think Riley's like in front of her, and the way Ellie is looking at her, like she is, as you say, she's just in love with her, like.
Yeah.
And those are the moments like you don't quite get that in games. Sometimes you do in like the cutscenes or whatever, but to see it in the TV show was just like it sort of fleshed out their relationship a little better.
Yeah, and I guess it's what actors can bring in real life to a moment that perhaps is a little bit more difficult in animation.
Yeah.
And it was just stunning. And so you enjoyed the episode? It was a good one for you.
I did like it. Like I say, obviously it had its differences from the game and stuff. Like what I liked about the TV show version is that it only took one infected to like mess up everything.
That's all it takes.
Yeah.
That's all it bloody takes. And do you know what? This TV show, I'm so tense in this TV show in every single episode. I sit there, I think my arms are folded. I feel like I'm tensing my body because I feel like something bad's always going to happen. And I guess that's what they want you to feel. And that obviously means they're doing their job right, because I feel for these characters. I don't want them to get hurt. And even though this was a flashback, because this is the problem I have. I say problem, okay, and this is a slight criticism, but it's a criticism of storytelling in general. It's that when you do get a flashback episode in TV shows, they're great for characterization. They're stunning, and this is a testament to that, because it was wonderful to see Ellie being a bit more, well, dealing with more normal problems, I guess, rather than these big life-threatening problems. But in terms of keeping the tension, they don't tend to do that really, because you already know Ellie's okay.
Yeah.
So what this episode was asking you to do was to care about Riley, and it's a flashback, and we're not seeing her now. So that's a big ask for an audience to do, is to care for a character who we're probably only going to see this once, or once at this point, then not for a while, or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was amazing to me that I did still feel tense, because especially when you saw the infected lying there in, like attached to the wall, or the fungus growing up the wall. That was such a stunning image as well, by the way. Gross but stunning. So, but my general issue is that sometimes flashback episodes slow down the narrative and do make you take a step back sometimes, that when you want to be pushed forward, especially as Joel had been impaled by that bat, and he was
Yes.
lying there bleeding out and infected himself, and I just thought, oh fucking hell. So that's the story I wanted to see. So at the time of watching, I was a little bit taken aback because, okay, we are having to take a deep breath now and see something else. And I get narratively that it makes sense because whilst Joel is out for the count, this is the perfect time to tell a story like that. And I guess in the game that makes sense as well. But this did do a good job of still making me feel tense for the characters. But I'm worried that on a rewatch, it might be an episode that you could skip.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Yeah, I think strategically it was the best place to put it. I mean, that's where it is in the game anyway, but I mean, yeah, it was. I think the story in general, like if we're talking about the games and the TV shows, right? If they'd done a situation where Joel's incapacitated and then an episode later he's all right and carries on,
like a
it'd be like,
time jump. Yeah.
yeah, it'd be like, oh, that's just plot armor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because the thing is, he's awesome as a character.
But he's human.
He's human, yeah. You know, and you don't really want to see him, you know, and when you consider all the things he struggled through and stuff like that, it's nice to have something that can keep Joel on his back for a bit.
Yeah.
You know, so that's just like, oh shit. And you do worry about him. Like I know
do.
like you were saying before, like, oh my god, is he gonna survive? Like because let's face in these TV shows and stuff, and with this story, no character is truly safe.
No.
And you know, you with Henry and Sam, a lot of people thought like you got Henry and Sam, then you had like Tess before that. You think like, oh, they're just along for the ride. It's like, yeah, they are, but only for this bit.
Yeah. And I feel I was going to come to this point a little bit later on, but as we have organically reached it, let's talk about it now. That is kind of maybe one of the only slight criticisms I have about the show, is that the actors who come in and play these parts for 1 or 2 episodes, it's like they're then done and you move on. And I think it's world building, it is, but it isn't building a cast of characters that you're going to follow over a long period of time. You really are just following the 2 central characters. And these other people are kind of nipping in and nipping out, and you're not seeing them ever again. It's closing their stories as quickly as it's starting them.
Yeah,
and that's quite interesting. And it is interesting, but it's also a slight criticism. So, like, going back to Tess very briefly, because I thought, cool, I didn't know she was in this. That's cool. When I first saw her, and she makes quite an impression straight away. And then she's gone just as you've getting used to her. And they haven't really addressed that from a character point of view. Because, you know, he does say, like, don't talk about her. I don't want to talk about her. So you get the impression there was a relationship there, and that idea that he's feeling very upset about it, and so can't quite bring himself to talk about it yet. And that was a good moment. But now quite a lot of time has passed, and they are chatting, and she's just gone.
Yeah.
And then the brothers, they're just gone. And that was such a huge, horrible thing that happened that they witnessed, they had to go through. And they have to move on. And I guess it's the nature of the world they're living in.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's death, isn't it? It's keep on moving or die. And that's what the world is. And so I do understand that, but it is, you have to adjust slightly, I think, to these characters coming in and going so quickly. But then it does beg the question, so there's 2 points, whether it's worth investing in those characters, whether it's worth the audience's time and attention to not just think, oh, they're going to be gone next week, so does it matter? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I slightly worry that that's going to be the case. It might not be. Perhaps we'll pick up other story, other characters, and we'll move forward, and this big cast will split up a bit and see different parts of the world, and we'll be with characters for longer. And I think that would be something I would like to see moving forward. But it just does worry me that I'm not going to care about these characters coming in for brief, because I think they're going to be there for a brief amount of time, and then because they're going to die, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah,
It's quite different.
it's very different, isn't it? I think. I mean, I could be honest with you. I am incredibly biased when it comes to Last of Us. So I'll
They can do
probably
no wrong for you.
there is that. There is a little bit of that, but I do think as well that like um, if you would just put this alongside Walking Dead for a minute, right?
Yeah.
Every like with the T. I mean, I've never read the books, okay, but I'm only going off the TV show, right?
Okay.
It developed a notoriety for basically repeating the same shit over and over,
It did.
which is basically find a settlement, stay here. Oh crap, zombies, move on to
Yes.
another settlement, right?
Yes.
But as you said there, Anora, there's always a group of survivors in it. Like it was supposed to be Rick Grimes, and we're meant to be following him.
Yeah.
It's such a large group of characters now, and then these groups now have divided into like 3 or 4 different groups as the seasons have gone on. So now you're following so many different characters, and I do think that's good because it gives you that sort of variety, and you end up liking characters more than others. And like everybody loved Daryl because he had a crossbow or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But then I just think there's so many characters that if somebody died, it would be like, I don't think I'd give as much of a crap because
Spread too thin, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that. But then, like Last of Us, obviously that was made in like 2013. I don't think they did it deliberately, but I think subconsciously. I think they've obviously been very aware. The writers have been very aware of The Walking Dead on TV and stuff, and I do think that they've maybe looked at what they want to do differently. You know what not to do, if you like, and very much like learn from the lessons of stuff like Walking Dead. Because if you think is Last of Us, right? It's pitched as a sort of a zombie apocalypse. Now, if you look at it as a show, just going off a TV show, not even to do with the games, right? There is nowhere near as many infected as there are zombies in Walking Dead.
Yeah.
In terms of like ratio. Because what Last of Us is trying to sort of get across is that, yeah, the world's a dangerous place because of the infected, but it's also a dangerous place for the hunters, for the raiders, for the fireflies, for Fedra, humans. And so that makes the world a little bit more dangerous then, because Joel's got to get Ellie across, I think it's across America, right? From Boston or wherever. And now it's not just a watch out for infected. Now it's a watch out for anybody because you don't know if you can trust them or not.
Yeah, 100%. The human villainy is just as bad, if not worse.
Yeah, because they're more capable and they're more conscious of what they're doing, and
yeah, which kind of does lead us really nicely into episode 8 because, Ellie is out there trying to hunt for food because she realizes she's coming to the end of. She doesn't know what to do, does she? With Joel just lying there.
Yeah.
And I did really like her decision. So kind of from the previous episode, we obviously they both get bit. Let me not move on too quickly because in Left Behind they both get bit,
yes.
And they decide to sit there, and then that they would go together, sort of thing, which was sort of really beautiful. The whole episode. Don't get me wrong. Here's me saying that these characters coming in and then going and you don't feel anything, but in Left Behind I felt a lot. I felt it was such a good piece of television, and I feel like perhaps not getting the right amount of praise because of where it is in the narrative, and because you were sort of the season was winding up and it was so much action and stuff was happening, and then it was like step back, let's not talk about action, let's go back into a character piece, and that's the thing that was a slight issue for me. I think I loved the two girls together and their relationship and their spark and all the things that she'd planned to show her, and it was just twinged with sadness throughout the whole thing. Then they both got bitten. After they both kissed, and it was beautiful. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And then so we don't see what happened then, though. So the episode ends and we don't see Riley turning and then Ellie having to kill her. We don't see that, but obviously it's implied. We know that was what was going to happen. And then that decision that she made then to go back and not leave Joel, she's like, no, I'm going to help you. It was a really nice juxtaposition. I really enjoyed that. But then of course she goes out there to try and help, and she realizes that she's young, and she encounters this marvelous little community of foodies. I mean, clearly they're really into they're missing the gastropub, aren't they? Let's be honest, they're a fan of barbecue. They're big meat eaters.
Yes.
Now, that was a very sinister episode. And I was very uneasy. And, I mean, they all played it wonderfully. The main guy who was the leader of that community, who was a preacher, I guess, who used to be a teacher. Now he was a preacher. And so on paper was all the kind of aspects of somebody who you want to follow and want to trust. And he was what was he, Stu? He was a cannibal.
Yes, so he went from preacher, teacher to meat eater.
yeah. I mean, it was like that was gross. And it was very well done. Like, you knew it was a sinister community when they were all sitting there, and she was in that like cafe at the beginning or whatever, and the little girl was crying about her father, and they was like, "Can we bury him?" And they were like, "No, the ground is frozen solid." And you were like, "That's an excuse." Straight away, you were like, "No, you'd find a way. What's going on here?" It was very cleverly done, but it was vile.
Yes.
And this is the kind of humanity that now Ellie is stuck, be caught up with, because she's without Joel and she's doesn't know what to do next, and she wants to be able to trust another adult, but she knows, and this is who she meets.
Yeah, she runs into David. Yeah,
David. It's even like a biblical name, isn't it? Oh,
yeah. Yes. Although I like it's not as on the nose in like The Walking Dead. There's a priest and his name's Gabriel.
Oh yeah, true. Yes, I know it's a bit more subtle,
yes.
and I know that you were telling me that his right hand man is the actor who voiced the character of Joel in the games.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I missed that during the episode because Troy Baker is the guy that voices Joel, and yeah, he played James in the show, but I wasn't 100% sure if it was him or not. As only when the episode finished, I saw the credits and I was like, oh, it was him.
Right.
But obviously he's a voice actor, so I've only seen him a couple of times in like behind the scenes stuff and interviews.
Yeah, of course.
So and he didn't have much dialogue either, so didn't recognize his voice at first. Obviously he puts on a voice for Joel or whatever, but it's like, oh man, but he was still very good.
He was quite a good presence, even for kind of arguably a side character. I did feel like he was important.
Yes. Yeah.
He was sort of straddling the line between blindly following David's instruction and wanting to do his own thing, and you could see that battle in him of what's best for the society and what he wants to do out of vengeance for Joel killing his friends.
Yeah, that's right. And again, that's another thing that I've loved about the games and stuff. There's that brilliant that line of, it's more or less a monologue, as if from David, when he explains to Ellie about how the winter that they've had has been like especially cruel and stuff like that, and that whole sequence, like that's exactly how it is in the game, and it's chilling in the game. No pun there. But it's the moment when Ellie realizes, oh shit, they're on to me, like.
It was really well performed. Is that when she's in the cage?
No, this was when they were sort of by the fireplace at the start.
You know, when yes, I know. And she's holding the gun at him. Yeah.
So I mean, it was very chilling, and David's an interesting character in the game, and they've added this layer to him now in the show of him being like a priest and being a preacher and stuff like that, because that wasn't really in the game. The cannibalism side, like you you kind of see it, but it's not as on the nose. On the nose is a wrong phrase. I shouldn't use that, but yeah, that sounds like negative when I say it like that. No, but you're not as aware of it in the game as you are in the TV show until a certain point in the game where you go back to playing as Joel. Do you know when Joel comes in to like save the day?
Yes.
Right. Well, he goes through that back room, doesn't he? And he sees the bodies hanging there and stuff.
Woof.
Yeah. When you're playing the game, that's your first sort of realization of like, oh shit, these are cannibals. Like, but before that, you don't know anything. So it's really quite interesting.
Well, it's interesting though because it isn't explicitly said in the episode. It's sort of it was all a bit cloak and dagger, and then you did see the bodies, and then it kind of that reaffirmed what was going on. And you saw that big tray of meat when she was walking in, and they were putting it in like the soup to feed everybody, and you were sort of like, well, hang on a second, like didn't they were just saying, hey, nothing's growing, they have no food, but then they did just shoot a horse. So
True.
it was still ambiguous at a point, I think, what it was supposed to be. I mean, as a seasoned TV viewer, we were kind of like, they're eating people.
Yeah.
You could tell, and it's all they had left, and that is how dark this particular society has taken its turn. But what I did also find really interesting was that scene where Ellie was locked up in the cage. And he was kind of like, prowling around the cage, talking to her. He really was like, it was prowling. It was vile because it took an even step further. He like tried to hold her hand.
Yes.
And it got a bit sexual. And she's a child or a young teenager. And again, there's so much thrown into this particular society of what has gone wrong. And not just because they're infected, but these people who are lawless, but they're making up their own law and own rules about how to survive, which includes cannibalism. The teacher, preacher, meat eater, possible pedophile. Like there was a lot. I mean, what could go wrong? Let's go stay there.
Yes.
His speech where he says how actually he enjoys some aspects of this society. I can't remember the exact quote, but he's there and he's like, "You're like me. You will thrive here because you're a leader and you were willing to do what needs to be done and you'll enjoy it. I can see it in your eyes." Oof, that was dark.
Yes. Yeah. It's that scene when she's in the cage. It's a very similar play out in the game as well, even with the holding of the hand thing. And then obviously she breaks his finger as she tries to reach for the keys and stuff.
Yeah,
that all happens the same. But in the game, what's different, and this is why it shocked me in the TV show. Like in the game, he obviously, he's annoyed or whatever, and he's like, "What am I supposed to tell the others now?" And then that's when she says, like, as he walks out, she goes, "Ellie, the girl who broke your fucking finger." So all that's the same. But in the TV show, it was very question. I mean, I'm not a fan of the word anyway, but when he chucked in the C word, I was like, whoa. I was like, geez, man.
They've really poured everything bad into this one character. And, and I think that was on purpose because, first of all, it was trying to show how the depths that this particular group of people have spiraled to. And this particular character, and how he's found himself in charge of people, and what happens when the wrong person is in charge, which is kind of a theme through the whole series, really, is that when the wrong person has the power and people are following them, and how bad that can go. There's that side of it. It's also showing how strong Ellie is as a character. Not only to kind of withstand what he's throwing at them in this particular group and seeing that it's wrong, and she knows it's wrong, and so she doesn't want to follow it or doesn't want to be a part of it. The ability to fight back. And to see how she can get herself out of the situation without Joel. Because actually the reality is that she's not necessarily going to have Joel for the rest of her life as her kind of protector. And so the need for her to be kind of her own leader and to lead herself, that strength that she has to get up and to get out of that cage, and then the following scene where he is hunting her. I mean, didn't and she she got like a knife and like slit the guy's neck. James's neck with a cleaver. That was vile, but completely necessary. And I did. And before we go into the other scene in the restaurant under the fire, I just want to very quickly talk about the fact I love that turning point where she was just like, "I'm infected," and David's like, "No, you're not," and she's like, "Look at my arm. I am," and guess what that means? I just bit you. So now you're infected. I loved that because it showed kind of the balance of power shifting, because she's held down on that table, about to be butchered, and yet she still manages to sway the balance in her favor. Where you think, oh my God, she's a victim. Nah, she's not. She just completely put him in his place. And it made him then panic and spiral and lose control.
Yes.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
And of course, that leads then into the next scene where he tries to reassert his control. And that is obviously hunting her, and then the attempted rape.
Yeah.
What a vile human being.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think it's a cleaver that they use in the show, but in the game it's a machete.
I mean, we're splitting hairs there.
It's
a big blade.
It's a very big blade, yes.
Sharp it is, Stu. Very sharp.
Yes. But it's not much of a distinction between the two things, but like I can't remember if he said it in the TV show, but the moment when, do you know when he's like actually like on top of her?
Yeah.
And she's trying to reach for, we'll call it the blade.
Yeah.
If we're talking about both scenes here. Well, the last line he says to her in the video game, and I felt like when he said this line, I felt like it's something that we think of when we think of Ellie. In the game, when he's on top of her, I think he's trying to strangle her. So she's reaching for it. And at this point, you're playing as Ellie. You have to like tap the button to reach for the weapon. Like,
okay.
Last thing he says to her is, "You have no idea what I'm capable of." And then whack, she has him with the blade, right?
Right.
I can't remember if he says that in the TV show or not.
I can't remember either.
I'll have to watch it again. But that line, although it's his line and it's like his last words, what follows of her, again, they did the exact same thing in the show, which I loved, when she's like hacking the fuck out of him. You can't see him, you could just see her, like, and it's rage, it's shit, I better make sure this guy stays down because I know what he's going to do. It's fear.
Oh, it's panic.
It's survival. It's panic. It's everything.
Oh, and it was just, she had to keep hacking and screaming, and this building is burning around her, but she's like, she's trying to take back her power, which again she almost lost. After claiming that power in the other room and still having to run away. The fact that she's running away does kind of reassert the power in the hunter. And then the hiding, and she's got a weapon, and she's hiding, and she's trying to save herself. And then that part where he unbuttons his trousers and she's being held down, she's reaching. I mean, you just thought, oh my God, this actually couldn't get any worse. But what I do have a lot of respect for, obviously, she's stabbing and stabbing and stabbing, and that's a release. That's her releasing every one of those emotions and pouring it into this meat sack of shit that she is just stabbing, and she's covered in his blood, and the place is burning because she is just like, no. And what I have the utmost respect of as well is that, we know at that point that Joel's on his way to save her.
Yeah.
And he doesn't. She saves herself. That was so good. And I mean, I'm glad she runs into him outside, and then she's like still sort of wired and tunnel vision. She's just still frightened and still ready to hack anybody else who comes next to her, because she's like, no one else is coming to do that to me ever. But that was a wonderful moment with the two of them as well. They just walk off into the snow. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
this show really has got me. And to be fair, you are right in saying that if that episode had come up before, or instead of the episode about Left Behind, it perhaps would have been, there would be no time to go back to Left Behind at that point.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have fit.
No.
It was such a good episode. I was so tense, and even after it finished, I was like, "Oh my god!"
Yes. Yeah, a lot happens, and you sort of like fear for Ellie, don't you? Because she's on her own. But yeah, the whole idea that she's on her own and she's trying to do this stuff. I know, like in the game, like in the show, she goes outside and she comes across Joel there. But in the game, Joel's managed to get into the building, and then he grabs her from behind to like turn her around, and she shits herself. And I think
literally, she shits herself literally or figuratively.
Figuratively.
Oh, okay.
We'll
because
never know,
when
really.
I said to you, "Could this woman get any worse?" I think shitting yourself is probably it.
Yes.
Fantastic. Now I need new clothes.
Brilliant. Yes. Yeah, and I think she's still in that sort of zone of like that sort of survival mode.
Yeah.
And yeah, the way it's done in the game, he just like holds her, and then she realizes it's him, and I think all she says is something like, "Oh, he tried to," and then she just like stops and breaks down or whatever.
Yeah.
And
okay, I'm really glad they made that change, and actually, I'm really glad that happened after Ellie got out herself.
Yes.
That's quite important for her character.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think as well when you're playing the game, because it keeps cutting back between you're playing as Joel and then you're playing as Ellie. So you're playing as Joel when you're like running through the snow, trying to find where you've got to go to.
Right.
And then it cuts to Ellie when you're playing as her. And do you know what? That level is actually, it's terrifying to play because the building is burning down.
The what?
Yes, the building is burning down, and what they've done in the game is because the mechanics of the game and like the artificial intelligence that's in these video games is that you have to be careful where you step. So in the game, although you've got to hide from David because one swipe with a machete and you're dead, you can't do anything, right? Whilst you're hiding, there's broken glass on the floor, and if you step on it, he hears it. He comes running towards you.
Oh, okay.
And you don't have a gun. You've just got like a little knife. That's all you've got. So yeah, you're even playing that level. It's like, oh shit. And yeah, you're trying to sneak around, and you're going in between like seating booths and stuff like that to try and get around him. But yeah, you literally have to you basically have to play hide and seek, but with blades.
Oh.
Yeah.
Back. That is tense.
It's a tense game. It's very tense game.
Everything about this is tense. But what as well, I think moving into the last episode, staying with Ellie for a second, because I want to talk about the cold open. But when there's a bit of a time jump, I think, because they've moved in space as well as time, because there's no snow anymore. Joel seems a lot better from his wound, but Ellie's walking around still in a bit of a daze.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that was her still processing what just happened in the previous episode. And obviously, her having to kill that guy, and we have just seen the story leading up to the point where she had to kill somebody who she loved.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to kind of it was all there on her face, and she wasn't saying much. And he was like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, sorry, yeah." And you were like, "Oh, this has properly affected her."
Yeah.
I liked that because sometimes that could have been easily sort of, she could have moved on a bit, especially with a bit of a time jump, and we might not have seen that. But I kind of respect that we saw that.
Yeah. Yeah, she's been through a lot, hasn't she? She's a 14-year-old girl. seen far too many people die. And this reaffirms the line that she had a couple of episodes back where she says to Joel how, like, everybody in her life has either left her or died.
Yeah.
Everyone she's ever loved, like,
Yeah.
has either left her or died. So I think it's all that comes to a head by the time you get to this finale and you realize, like, shit, this girl has been through so much. Like,
so much.
Come back next week to hear Stuart and I's thoughts on the season finale of The Last of Us and the season as a whole. Thank you for listening to What's Your Fandom. Please hit the subscribe button to make sure that you never miss an episode. And if you could leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts, not only will we be your bestest friends forever, but it will also help other listeners to find us. You can follow us on TikTok and Instagram, where our username is @fandompod, and on YouTube just search for What's Your Fandom. And we will catch you next time.